Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Let's Play Warframe. I'm your host with the most, as always, Francois878. And in today's video, I would like to talk about the changes to frames in Update 18.13 that I would not consider a full rework, but abilities were changed on certain frames, Mesa, Mirage, Valkyr, Excalibur, Trinity, that kind of removes a bit of the cheese from the game and kind of removes some of the ability abuse that was going on with these abilities. And honestly, having played all of these characters, I'm 100% on board with these changes. I don't think that these changes, or quote-unquote nerfs, as the Reddit and forums are calling them, really break any of these characters. Yes, you might have to change your builds around a little bit, but honestly, that's not a bad thing. And being able to lock down an entire map with Prism's blind effect is a joke, and it trivializes the game. And so, I'm 100% behind DE's decision to change it, and that's basically where we're going. We're going to go through each change, though, per frame. Mesa's changes were actually pretty good. Her Peacemaker weapons, which are her dual pistols that she uses on her ult, now scales with secondary weapon mods, which is something that people have been asking for forever, which makes sense because Hysteria scales with melee. Exalted Blade scales, it doesn't make any sense for Mesa's Peacemakers not to. It really doesn't. However, the base stats of Peacemaker have been reduced to kind of compensate for the tremendous damage increase that secondary weapon mods can give this weapon. It makes sense, you kind of, you give a lot and take a little. It's nothing that I have a problem with. Mesa's Peacemakers are still a force to be reckoned with, honestly. Not the best AoE ult anymore, but still, I mean, I was still having fun and taking people down just as quickly as I was before. Also, Mesa's shooting gallery will now provide a permanent buff to Mesa, and allies will still have it rotate through. This is awesome. This is just a straight buff for Mesa. Shooting gallery is an amazing ability, and being able to have that as a permanent buff instead of waiting for it to rotate through your allies is awesome. Alright, there's nothing bad about that. But overall, Mesa's changes, great. I feel like these are changes that we've asked for months and have finally been implemented. Moving on, though, Mirage, slight buff to sleight of hand, increase the damage and detonation range of all objects that can be booby-trapped. It's whatever. Sleight of hand is probably Mirage's worst ability. I've never really used it so much. I usually use Hall of Mirrors and Eclipse and Prism, so it's a buff. That's good. But really what people have been picking up their pitchforks about is Prism's blind effect is now affected by line of sight. Prism's damage has been buffed slightly to compensate for this change. And people are freaking out about this, just like they freak out about every line of sight change. I've had DEs back on this before. Line of sight with blinding effects makes sense. It doesn't make any sense that a flashbang goes off 2 rooms over and the enemy feels the effect of that. It doesn't make any sense logically. So this isn't like a crazy nerf that is real life. It just doesn't make sense in real life. This is a perfectly acceptable and well-explained nerf. Plus, being able to blind the entire map with Prism and basically render every enemy on the map totally useless is cheese. It's cheese. That's all it is. It's an abused skill, and the line of sight makes perfect sense. Now, moving on, Valkyr's changes. Hysteria is Valkyr's ult. She rages out, and you tear people up with your claws. Basically, the way it is now is, or the way it was pre-update 18.13, you could stay in Hysteria for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes. And then, unless an energy leech Eximus came along, like, you were good. And even then, if you had enough energy, you could kill him before it became a problem. You know, Hysteria was basically invincibility mode. It was God mode. So now, they've changed Hysteria, so the longer you're in Hysteria, the more energy that you will consume using it. It does have a cap. And the longer you stay in Hysteria, the less Hysteria mitigates damage. Basically, there's a little in the upper right-hand corner when you're playing the game. Hysteria will track how much damage that you're taking and how much damage Hysteria has mitigated. And as you go through, the longer you use it, now the less effective it's going to be. So now when you leave Hysteria, the potential damage that you could take is much higher. So now it's much more important for Hysteria to be deactivated either, you know, away from where the enemies are, or you kill everything before you leave Hysteria. Before, it didn't matter. You could leave Hysteria in a group of enemies and not take any damage, practically. So I feel like these are decent changes. Also, when you leave Hysteria, that is also affected by line of sight as well. So that's a positive line of sight change. Honestly, like I said, Hysteria was God mode. This is not an unforgivable nerf, if you even want to call it that. I feel like this is, even after the change, I still felt like Hysteria lasted a decent length of time. Not 24/7 like it was before, but built properly, Hysteria should still last a very long time, and you really shouldn't have any major problems with it. Now, Exalted Blade on Excalibur. Exalted Blade will now, the damage of the waves that come out of your sword as you use it will now diminish according to distance traveled and enemies punctured. This makes perfect sense. He's a melee character, he should be up close. That makes sense. Exalted Blade's built-in Radial Blind will now cost half of the energy of a regular Radial Blind. Again, this makes sense. Having infinite Radial Blind on Exalted Blade spins is cheesy, and it's abused, and there's no reason for it to be free. So they have given it half the cost of a regular Radial Blind. Now, it should also be half the range and half the duration, but I feel like the built-in Radial Blind is not quite as good as the regular one, so that could use a little tweak, but I am on board with Exalted Blade's changes. It's not a direct stats nerf, it's just you have to kind of bear in mind where you're at on the map versus where the enemies are a little bit more, and I don't know, I don't feel like this is gonna really hurt Excalibur that much. You may have to play him slightly differently from this point forward and get a little bit closer to enemies, but this Exalted Blade was such a cheesy ability. You could basically stand in a hallway and just deal crazy damage to anyone at pretty much any range. It's Exalted Blade is now kind of brought more in line with other ults, I think. Now, Trinity changes. I'm still not super... Trinity is a character that I'm not totally... I don't play Trinity a lot, generally, and when I do, it's energy vampire builds and not blessing builds. But now blessing heals allies within the shared Tenno affinity aura range. This is a new UI feature that was implemented in 18.13, basically to show how many Tenno are close to you, and if you're getting all of the shared affinity. So, as far as I know, range mods no longer affect blessing, is what I'm hearing from that, basically. And also, this is going to be big for hallway heroes. Hallway heroes will now not have the option to get these heals. So that will... That was my phone going off. People will now have to be more motivated to stay closer to the group, which is a good thing. Hallway heroes are not good. The damage resistance has been changed slightly. There's a formula here. I may paste it on the screen here so you guys can look at it. As far as from what I've read online, the damage resistance is still pretty decent. I think the big nerf here is with the range, because Blessing still instantly heals all allies as long as they're in that Tenno affinity aura. So who knows? I'm gonna do a little bit more work with Trinity. As far as I can tell, for the little bit of time that I spent playing her, she seems exactly the same to me, except for the range. Please let me know if I'm losing my mind, because honestly, I didn't see any big differences. I didn't. But that covers the changes to the frames in update 18.13 that weren't full reworks. This is kind of a big thing for me. I think this is a good step. Now, I know a lot of people are complaining about nerfs in a PvE game, but, I mean, when you have abilities that are... These abilities are basically the tongue cores of Warframe abilities. They're so much better than a lot of other abilities that they kind of have to be reared in a little bit and reined in, not reared in, Jesus. Reined in a little bit and kind of, you know, these are still great abilities, and you still, you know, you may have to change your builds up a little bit, but I mean, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to enjoy these abilities and tear up this game with these abilities. They're still great, honestly. But thank you very much for coming, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more Warframe content coming very soon. I've been your host with the most, as always, Francois878, signing off.